Welcome to this episode of Mind and Muse Crafts. This is episode 19. And as always, I am recording and coming to you from the western part of the island of Puerto Rico, which is an island in the Caribbean, where I live and have lived for the past 30 years with my husband. And where I come to you every so often, every couple of weeks, to share with you the crafty side of my life. So, in this episode, we are anticipating a celebration that is carried on in many parts, in many countries, during this upcoming week, which is the celebration of St. Valentine's Day. So, I am going to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day in advance if you celebrate that type of thing. And in this episode, I am going to share with you some of the special crafts that I have been up to in commemoration of this upcoming celebration. So let's begin. Let's begin with maybe the most obvious. What am I wearing? To begin with, then, our St. Valentine's Day celebrations. I like to set the mood, and in doing so, I created the necklace that I am wearing. So this is a mixed media project that I worked on the previous weeks. Let's see if I can remember not to put it in front of my face so that you can still see me talking. It started out being a felting project because you can see, the back side is better to see. I put this up on, no, I'm not remembering, am I too? No. Oh. I put this up on Instagram, where I showed you the beginnings of it. Since then, it went through a couple of changes. One of the changes was that I added this handmade tassel. It's made out of cotton yarn, and I just had that sort of a bell bead cap. It's called the bead cap. A bell bead cap hanging around there, and I decided to put it to some use. The heart has been felted, needle felted. And then I crocheted the border around the felt. And I added the beads on the front. Now the beads that are on the front, most of them are glass. They were sewn on by hand using a regular needle and thread. But then I had the problem that I was obviously seeing my stitches on the back, so I refelted the back. I put some more batting on top, and carefully, without going too deep with my needle and not hitting the beads that are on the other side, because then the needle might break, I felted the other side. Then I added the decorations at the bottom, and finally decided, it took me a little while to sit down and think about what I wanted to put on the neckband, and so I finally decided for this beaded neckband, which is just seed beads placed on some, I think this is fish line. It's not even crafting wire, it's just fish line. So there it is, my first make for today, which was that felted heart pendant. And I have put up on, hopefully by the time this podcast is out, you will be able to go to my blog. And on the blog, I have put up a photo tutorial talked a little bit about the history of Valentine's Day and how hearts became the representation of that day. And I actually put up a photo tutorial of how I made the heart. And so you can go by there if you're interested to check it out, read it, and just to see how I do that kind of thing. And so there's Sharon. It's up on my blog, mindandmusecrafts.com, and the latest post will be the post on Valentine's Day. So that was my felted heart bib, or this is my felted heart bib, and making it brought me on to another idea. And I was just thinking that it's going to be almost a year since I began podcasting these episodes, and I still have yet to share in a make-along with all of you. So I thought an idea came to me when I was making this that I would like to host here on this channel a mixed craft make-along. A make-along in which you use more than one craft to create the finished product. I am calling this make-along In Harmony Make-Along. And the reason I'm calling it that is because sometimes when we are in this crafting business, we tend to get the impression from our fellow crafters that one crafting or one craft is in some way better than the other. It is in some way more deserving of our efforts. And so, as a person who has practiced many crafts and sometimes at the same time, I would like to dedicate our first Mal to this idea that crafting is good. And it doesn't matter which craft you practice, it is a good thing to practice a craft. And for me, it is even better if you mix them. Now that isn't always possible, but you can find projects, and I have been lucky enough to receive as gifts during the past year several books on making projects that mix crafts. And I'm taking this up as my signature. I think in a lot of the work that I do, I really like to mix crafts. So that's going to be our first make-along. And so I'm inviting you, if you knit and crochet, to have a project that mixes knit with crochet. If you felt, to have a project that mixes felting with crocheting and with knitting, so you can knit up a basket and then felt it, or you can crochet up a hat and then felt it, or you can do as I did, you can felt something and then use crochet or knitting to add details to it. And it doesn't have to be crochet or knitting. If you weave, and you can mix weaving with another craft, be it whatsoever. If you scrapbook, and you can mix crochet, knitting, or another craft with your scrapbooking. If you are a spinner, you can spin the yarn and then use any of your yarny crafts to make up a project, and that would be considered a project for this Mal, because you are mixing your crafting skills, and that's all I'm asking of you. So the Mal is going to run for 2 months. I am going to begin it on February the 28th, and I want to give you time because I know that some crafts require long periods of time in between each phase of the project, where you have to let something dry, or you have to, I don't know, you have to wait before you follow on to the next phase. Or it might just be that because the way you craft, the time you dedicate to crafting takes time. You have a week, you have a half an hour this week, an hour next week, and you don't have any time the following week. So you have to have a long period of time to finish something. So there it is. There is my invitation to the first Mal of this channel, of this podcast, and I'm hoping that you will find in you the energy and the desire and the time to participate. So, in order to carry this out, I do believe that YouTube isn't the best media where we can carry this out. I am going to open up an account for this podcast on Ravelry. It is going to be called Mind and Muse Podcast. And so I feel that we need that. We need a place where we can get together, where we can chat, where we can give our opinions, where we can give ideas, where we can help others out and place our final projects. So I am going to set up an account on Ravelry for this podcast. And in that account, I am going to begin in that group. Obviously, if you don't know Ravelry, this type of thing is done in a group. So I'm going to create a group in Ravelry for this podcast. And that group is going to begin by simply having 2 threads, 2 simple threads. One is an introductory thread so that we can present each other, talk about the different crafts that we use, and then a chatter thread for the In Harmony Mal, in which you can, again, talk about your ideas, what crafts you are planning on using, what project you would like to make. You can photograph or upload a sketch of what you're thinking about doing and get ideas from other participants about what is the best way to do that, etc. Use that chatter thread in whichever way you feel. You can comment on other people's ideas and comments. And then I will put up later on, I'm thinking maybe after a couple of weeks, I will open up a thread for the final object. Because this is the way I work. I think we all need time. The Mal will accept WIPs because there are just some times where you need a long term to create a project, especially if you are mixing crafts. So maybe you've been starting something 6 months ago, a year ago, and you're just finishing it during this time period that we're running this Mal. Feel free to put it in. And you know what? I'm not even going to put that as a criteria. If you have a mixed craft project that you made some time ago, but you are so proud of it that you want to share it with us, go ahead and share it. As long as you made it, go ahead and put it in the finished objects. And great. Let's share things that we've done in the past. It all doesn't have to be about what we're doing now. So it will be a make along in the sense that we will all try to be making things during this period. But if you already started it and you want to include it, fine. And if you already finished it at some previous time, you did a mixed craft project that you want to share, I am fine with that also. Okay? So everybody's invited. It's an all-inclusive. Any craft is allowed. And hopefully I'll get some people excited about that, right? Our community is growing. And pretty soon we will hit a 500 subscriber mark, which I know isn't a big bam. I mean, it's not the biggest channel in the world. It's probably still considered a very small channel. But we have grown. We have grown slowly over the past year. And what fun it would be. How great would it be if we met that 500 mark for a 1-year anniversary? And then we could celebrate 2 things at once. I don't know. You can see I am all about celebrating. Celebration is a big part of my life. Those are just moments that make me very happy. And although I don't consider myself to be the most consumeristic person in the world, is that a word? I don't consider myself to be the most materialistic, I'm not into the consumerism phase where I have to go to a store and buy something in order to celebrate it. I can celebrate by baking, I can celebrate by crafting, I can celebrate in 1,000 ways. Well, maybe not 1,000, but I can celebrate in a lot of ways. That does not necessarily mean I have to go to a store and buy something. So I like celebrations, period. And so, with that thought, I am going to move on. Keep that in mind. Over the next couple of weeks, we are starting our first make along, and I would love it. I would love it if you could join me and we could see lots of projects that have been done by mixing different crafts. And you can be excited about it, I can be excited about it, find something new to do, and let's have a little bit of fun. Okay, so that's our first make along, and I am from there going to move on with the other segments of this channel that are more stable, that have been around for a while. For example, what am I working on? And so let me present the first finished objects, which is also a second heart. And this is a multi-craft again. I mean, it's the same craft as the one that I have on, but yeah, it's multi-craft. And so it's my second of my hearts. I felted the heart. And like I said, once the blog post is up with the photo tutorial on how to make this heart, this is the heart that I use in that photo tutorial, where I make the first heart, I make the second one, you see this small one here, Then I crochet a different border from the one I crocheted last time, and I tell you how to do that. I sewed on, I made it a little bit simpler in terms of, I know maybe this is too loud and all in your face heart but it's how my heart feels a lot of times. Chaotic. That's how my heart feels a lot of times. I don't know about yours, but it is chaotic. Now, if you look on the back side, it's very serene and calm. So I figured maybe I could use it one way or the other. But this one then is a little less chaotic, a little less all in your face. And so the bead decorations are simple, just sewn on again with a simple needle and thread. And then the back again has been felted just to make sure that I covered up all of my stitches from the beading. And with this one, I haven't had the time to put it on a necklace, but it could be another bib, or it could even be framed. And it could be framed, and it could just be let's say a crafty postcard, for a crafty Valentine's Day card, because I think it's delicate enough to send a message. So that is my second finished object, and it was all about hearts. It was all about felting hearts, hearty crafting for this 2 weeks. And those are my finished objects. They are felting objects. I have no crochet or knit felted objects, and I have no crochet or knit finished objects for this podcast, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But there are certain reasons why I have less crochet to share with you. But if you remember from the last podcast, I was working on a new garment. It was my Sea Lace garment by Rebecca Averill. It was a free pattern on, or it is a free pattern on Ravelry. And I was making it with this yarn that has been in my stash for maybe close to 2 years by now. I know it's the Persimmon. Is that what it's called? The Persimmon colorway by Heavenly Yarn Flower Design. Forgive me for looking down, but I've got my notes on my lap. Heavenly Yarn Flower Design. And this yarn I received as a gift from my daughter. So what I am making is I guess 2 years for me, since I haven't been around in the crafting community officially for more than maybe 4 or 5 years. 2 years is a deep stash for me. And this is what I've done up to now. I have not completed it, but it's here. I've got the complete bib, and I joined for the sleeves, and it's pulling up on the side because that's where I've got my working thread, so I'm going to turn it around. And what would you say that is? Maybe 6 inches of the body. I am not far from finishing, actually. I probably could have finished it. At this point, I have increased. I didn't actually bring it in for the waist. She does do a waist fitting, but I didn't really do that because I wanted something a little bit more boxier, but it wasn't as loose as I wanted it to be, so I did open up a little bit more for the hips. And so there is only one reason why it wasn't finished by now, and I'll share that with you in a moment, but it's nothing to do with the pattern. I like the pattern very much. I like how breezy it is. I like the color very much. I like the yarn very much, and I'm actually happy with it. It does take a while because all of the rounds are pretty long rounds, but sure, it's maybe nothing to do with the pattern. Why I have taken longer than I would have thought of, because it actually can be worked up probably in I don't know, but maybe in a week or a week and a half. I mean, it all depends on how much time. And my only reason to try and hurry and get something done is because in this case, it's a garment and I want to wear it or I want to use it in some way. But we really don't need to hurry through our crafting. But yes, I believe that probably by the next time, I should be able to finish it. This is my was the bag that I made for the Hotel of Bees Cal. And I guess it's appropriate because that yarn was actually gifted to me by my daughter for that cal, because I wanted to make a second Hotel of Bees shawl in that yarn because it's sport weight and it's 50% yak and 50% silk. And so it's a very luxurious yarn. Very nice feel to it. So that is my first, is it my only work in progress? Not my only work in progress, because I have brought something back to my hook. The homebody sweater is back on my hook because I don't know if you remember when I presented it the first time, but I had run out of cotton for the sleeves and I wasn't actually liking the way the sleeves were looking because of the fact that even though I doubled up on the sock yarn, it was still a lot thinner than the cotton with the sock yarn. And obviously the cotton was this like ivory color, and so it distracts a lot from the actual colors of the yarn. You can see more ivory than you can just see the colors peeking through. And where this has the colors in their full, and where it's a good thing to be able to see the colors that were actually in that Advent calendar kit, well, I wasn't comfortable with it. I didn't like the way it was looking. So I ordered another ball online. I had to buy something from Amazon, and they had this yarn as an add-on for a very low price, so I purchased one. And I avoided the temptation of buying more than one. And I have removed the yarn, and I am now redoing the sleeves. I think that looks much better. Just because it kind of like, I think that looks much better just because I think it goes more with what the sweater was looking like. And so the colors don't stick out as much, which is not a bad thing because of the colors, but because of the way the rest of it was made. It was kind of something that I didn't like. So I'm probably near the end of this sleeve. I've got this color is the one that I'm working on right now. And since I did the original sleeves doubled, well, I have 2 balls of this size to work into my sleeve. This color that's coming up is now this yellow color over here. That's the color that's coming up. I just worked through this. These were summer colors. And so I'm coming back to these colors here that I really didn't have a lot left when I was working with them. So the bands of color will be smaller than the ones that are currently coming up. But I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe these are going to be long sleeves. I'm thinking they're going to be long sleeves because it was 3/4 when I was only using the sock yarn doubled. It was also because I was using a smaller hook, because I think I went down to a 5.5 or a 5 millimeter, maybe a 5.5, because in the original one I was using the K, I was using the 6.5. So that was something else that I didn't like because I went to a smaller hook, it was smaller yarn. I didn't like the way it brought my sleeve in. So yeah, I deconstructed them and now I am on the reconstructing process. And I also think that that should be finished soon. And I am a lot happy with it, and that's the most important thing, right? That we be happy with our finished projects so that they get used. We're not making them just to make them. And I think that's something important in our community that we, because if you're just making things for them to sit around there or to get rid of them later, we're just contributing to more garbage in the world. And even though those are natural fibers, throwing them out is still just creating more garbage. Why would I need to do that when that sweater with normal use is going to last a long time? So yeah, I wanted to make something that appealed more to my sense of harmony and my sense of color and my sense of what is attractive and what is not. So take it for what it is. There you go. It's back on my hooks, and I think I might be able to have it done in a short period of time. It's not. Again, I'll share with you the reason why I wasn't able to finish those sleeves all in one go. So, over the last couple of weeks, most of my time has been spent on learning a new skill, not a new craft, it's still crochet, but it's a new skill. It is something that has gotten me a little obsessed for a number of reasons. One of my goals for this year was to work more with color and to try and master crochet color work. And I had that goal before. The hosts of the KCACY podcast, Vivian and Allison, decided that they were going to host a Colorworks Cal. And that's because Vivian is, again, she's the queen of many realms, but she is also the queen of Colorworks. And so it is just very impressive to see how calmly and how nonchalantly she just mentions that she's beginning a new colorwork project, that when I look at it, I could never dream of the yarn management to be able to do that. And so I had thought about this before, but now I am more motivated by the fact that this Cal is going to be running maybe during March and April. I'm not sure the dates, but you can go to their blog or watch their latest podcast and listen to their description of how the Cal is going to work. So as of late, I have been working a lot with planned pooling, and planned color pooling is, let's see, I guess we could call it a technique of working with variegated yarns that have color changes for which it is, that are long enough for you to make 3 or more stitches in each of those colors. So they have to be yards that have been dyed in such a way that the color sequence is a pattern, is repetitive. So if you have white, green, blue, white, green, blue, white, green, blue, and that each time each of those colors come up, they are basically the same length, so that when you stitch up, you will be stitching up the same amount. You'll have the same amount of stitches each time you get to the white, or the same amount of stitches each time you get to the red, the same amount each time you get to the green, although they don't need to be the same amount of stitches for each color. And so it sounds like not as much work as it is. Because first of all, you need to find a colorway that works for that technique. They don't all work. And you can find sites on the internet, if you Google color pooling, that offer you a list of common yarns that can be used for color pooling, because it's not something new. It's just that I'm always late to the game. Or maybe it's not, I mean, it's natural that when you work at a craft, you have not seen everything that has been done before the moment that you start. And so as you get more into it, you begin seeing things that at some point or another entered and were very popular in your craft but you just never knew about it. So color pooling is one of those things. It's been around for, well, since I can see, pretty much 2006, 2008. And there are lots of great videos that will help you along initiating the process. But even though you've got the best video in the world, even though you've got the best advice from people that have been practicing the skill for years, until you practice it, and first time you practice it, you will usually always find it difficult. So I was playing with some acrylic yarns that I have, because those are the ones that are listed. It's very easy to find names of acrylic yarns that will pool if you work them correctly. With the hand-dyed yarns, it is more a matter of luck, of finding a yarn that was dyed with those characteristics, because they're normally more liberal. They're normally more designed not with the idea of keeping the colors the same length. So it's a different story, but you could find them. You could find them, and I have read about people that have found them. It's just they're not as frequent. So I had yarn in my stash that I had been wanting to use for some time, and I started with this, and the process has been slow, and I wouldn't say frustrating, but yes, at times aggravating and painful, literally painful, because in the process of making the yarns, the companies don't always make the color segments the same length. White you'll be able to make 4 stitches in white on this turn. When the next sequence comes around, you can have 5, or you can have 3 only. And so part of doing color pooling and creating designs, it's called planned color pooling, because the idea is that with your stitch counts, you are going to make these colors pool in such a way that it will create a design. And in order to do that, you have to be playful. The oldest videos and the oldest blogs talk about a process in which you can start, crochet your way through one color sequence, count your number of stitches, and basically set back 1 or go forward 1 more to set off the pooling, and so that it creates a diagonal design. And there are some online tools right now, well, I only know of one, but there might be more, that you can also use to help with your planning. And that's what I used. I was working with this yarn first. I think it's I don't know if it's the oldest in my stash, but I just had it, and after I purchased it, I really did not find it attractive enough for what I wanted to do with it. Because of the fact that it's got long segments of the same color, pooling, is intentional or not, will occur at some point. This is called Mistletoe. It's just red heart. Okay, so this is a site that is used very frequently by many people. I don't know if I should say frequently, but it is a site that has been used in videos and mentioned on blogs that I read for planned pooling, and it is called plannedpooling.com. I believe it's an app that was written for knitting, but there have been people that have used it for crochet. For example, one very known one is Nastasia, and there's her video on how she worked up a colorway in planned pooling. And that is called an Argyle pattern. Jesus, talk about not being able to talk. And you can use this site, you can use this app to help you create, not to create the pattern, obviously, you have to create it by crocheting, but you can use this site to actually help you plan how many stitches do I need in each color, and how many stitches will I need in each row in order to create a design that I want. And so this is the site, and this is a design that is telling me that I can create with this mistletoe if I do it correctly. And so planning on what you want to make, some numbers work well and some numbers don't. Basically what you enter into the app is a color. You choose a color and then you say how many stitches you were able to stitch up in that color. And you also need to give it the number of stitches in a row. And depending on that, it will give you the design. Now notice that if I've got right now 47 stitches, and that's the design it's giving me. If I'm going to press here where it says 1 stitch longer, I'm just going to change my stitch count from, let's say, 47 to 48. I don't know if you can notice, but the design has changed. The design has changed. Again, I changed it to, there you go. I changed it to something else. And there are points where okay, here's a totally different design that the app is telling me that I can get with the same number of stitches per color, because that's basically not going to change. It's what you can get from each color, but using 54 stitches on each row. And I just want to go up. Usually when you get into the hundreds, the design gets pretty interesting. Let's see. For example, here I've got 170 stitches, like for a blanket, And so I fell in love. What can I tell you? I fell in love with the app. And so I don't know. I tried, what did I have here? 47 stitches? I guess. I was going for 47 stitches. I was going for something like that. Maybe a scarf. And so, where'd it go? Here it is. This was my attempt. Remember what you saw? This is what I got. Up to now, you know. That would be, basically this is the beginning. So it's the top of what they were showing me on the screen. This is where I worked up to now. And so, it doesn't look exactly what's on the screen, and I'll tell you why. I'll explain a little bit more about it in a moment. But if I continued it, I thought maybe it would look okay for like a wall hanging around Christmas, you know. It was just something that I had playing there, so. Okay, so it's getting there, but it is a tedious work of art. It is a tedious work of art because what happens? Like I said, number one, not every time the red or the green or the white comes out, you're going to have the same amount of stitches. For example, I was working with 11 stitches in the red, 4 in the white, and 12 in the, no, 11 stitches in the green, 4 in the white, and 12 in the red. But I found out that was in the first time that I went through the sequence. And so then I was working 47. What you do is you work completely through the sequence first. Here's the completely, you see these extra stitches here? You work completely through the sequence, and then on the next row you do, let's say I started with a green. Whatever you start with, I did my 12 greens, my 4 white, my 11 red, and then back to my 4. And then I start with the green again, and then you continue your sequence. If I reach the end of the row, I only had 3 whites there, so one of my whites I'm going to do on the next row. And so you continue the sequence of the number of stitches that you're making for each color all the way through the different rows, and that's what creates those diagonal changes in pooling. But like I said, sometimes your yarn is not exact, and so you'll get a red segment that's a little bit longer, and you'll end up having more than the 11 stitches that, or the 12 stitches that you planned for. For example, this one I thought after I began the first couple of rows, the majority of the rows after that, I would have been able to get 13 easily. And the same thing will happen for the green and the white, and sometimes it'll be too long, sometimes it'll be too short. So one of the things that you have to do is a lot of ripping back, because you have to get exactly the same amount of stitches for each of the color sequence, for each time a color comes out, because if not, your diagonals won't look right. You have to use up all your yarn completely. So you have to know exactly how much of a tail to leave, of the previous color, or how much of a stitch to have when I'm finished. I finished my 10 stitches in, or my 11 stitches in green. Should the stitch that I'm seeing at the loop that I'm seeing at the top of my hook be red or green? Those are things that you have to play with and find out, so that you won't get what they call muddy stitches, where one leg is one color and one leg is another color, because that will affect the way how clean the design looks. This is a very clean design based on no width. So when I move up to the next row, I've got some extra yarn that I need there in that change, in that pulling up to the next row, that is going to affect the length of my next segment. And so you have to play with all of those things. And sometimes it's frogging back and using a lesser tension. Sometimes it's frogging back and using a hook that's a little bit larger, 5.5 instead of a 5, or a 6 instead of a 5.5. And sometimes it's just doing that last stitch of your color sequence, doing it in a different stitch to use up more yarn or to use up less yarn. This is being done in single crochet that I didn't mention, because I thought it was, for the first time I was doing something, I thought it was easier to keep it simple, so I kept my stitch simple. I did work with, I think I am working here. This is a cotton yarn from Peaches and Cream, and I don't have the ball band with me. It's somewhere around the room, but I don't have it right now to tell you the color. But basically it's got 4 colors. It's got, what's it got? Blue, purple, white, green. Blue, purple, white, 3 colors. And it's pretty muddy, so like at the end of a color, the color will be faded before you work into the next color. So there's not a lot of room. The color changes are pretty small for crochet, so the most I could get was three or 4 stitches from each color, no more than that. So the best I could do, even with the color pooling program, was pooling, where I tried to get my colors, I'll put it this way, where I tried to get my colors vertically aligned, like all the blues in one segment, all the whites in one segment, all the greens in one segment, and back, and the sequin repeats. I couldn't get a Argyle design. I couldn't get it to go diagonally. But this one is linen stitch, which is a very popular stitch for pooling, linen stitch. It moves faster. It moves faster than single crochet. And so, but it does have the need where you have to do that extra chain. These single crochets, I am not doing any chain when I move from one row to the next. The linen stitch, you do have to do those 2 chains, so you have to end. It's a linen stitch, I'm sure you're mostly familiar with, is a single crochet and a chain. So you have to always end the row with a single crochet and a chain. That one chain, you do one more chain and to go up to the next row. And so you have to account for that extra yarn in your color sequence. If not, it'll mess up your sequence and it won't work. And I also tried working with this color that I have had in my stashed for a while because I purchased it for a group project that we never did. And this is the Icelandic. It's a well-known colorway from Red Heart. It's called Icelandic. And I have to say that I have not said that very frequently about a acrylic yarn, but I really like these color changes. I like the color combination. I guess that's the way I am. I'm a gray person in real life. And so this one I worked with several times. I had a very large piece, but because it was one of the first things that I was doing, I believe that first piece was in linen stitch. And so after I got maybe a couple of feet long, I noticed it was, I kept reading more about it, and I could critique my work and say, oh, this is off. The diagonal pattern is not coming out clear because I've got too many muddy stitches or whatever. So I broke it back. But I can put up a picture. I can probably put up a picture of the of what I made. Let me check. Okay, great. This is a picture of my original attempt, my first attempt with this Icelandic. And you could already begin to see that diagonal crossing of the colors. It's pretty cool. It's really, but then I got perfectionist and I decided it wasn't perfect enough for a first try, and I broke it all back. And since I went on to working with, I'm pretty sure if you were to look at it close enough and not have all the glaring from the lights and stuff and the screen, you could see that that is linen stitch. And it really wasn't that bad, but the perfectionist in me had to do something else. So I restarted it, and I have restarted it and restarted it and restarted it. So, yes, I'm in love. Color pooling, I think, is very attractive. I think it's very, it is very appealing to my senses, to my sense of design, and to the mathematical sense in me also. But it is time consuming because it is crocheting, ripping back, because you have to get the same number of stitches each time. I know that after and ever since pooling became a thing, Red Heart also created a yarn specifically for color pooling, but even the people that I saw working with that yarn on videos, they still had to do all of this creepy stuff of using a different stitch or eating up the yarn in some fashion. So it's not perfect, is what I mean. But if you see the larger designs, it is just a very attractive color design. And so I thought I could work with it for this color cal that's happening and maybe make something like that. This is a pattern from Red Heart using the Icelandic, and I think that is pretty cute. It's not new, like I tell you, there are many people that have used this yarn in their color pooling projects, and so luckily you can go online, color pooling Icelandic, and see the things they have come up with. But it's new for me. It's new for me, it's challenging for me, and I'm hoping to get better at it as the year goes by and hopefully have a finished project at some point. But not at this point. This is not the moment for that. But it is something that I think that I look forward to continuing as the year goes by. But it's not going to happen right now, and I know that, and I can tell you why. Maybe in the ending of this, where I'll talk a little bit more about my life status at this point. But I just also wanted to mention one more thing. I've gotten a little courageous with my crafting, and I saw that Crochet Zine, which is an Instagram magazine made up of 12, what do they call them? 12 screens, 12 posts. And in each one of those, they have another in each post they have a series of posts created by an invited guest to talk about their work. And so this has been going on for some months now, and they produce an issue every month, and I think it's a great effort on behalf of the three ladies that are in charge of this. And so I got courageous, and this month when they asked for submissions, I submitted a design to them. And I didn't make the cut because, their space is limited, but they did get back to me, and they did request to use the pattern in a stories on March the 17th. And so I've accepted, and I am in that stage of perfecting my design, remaking it in other colors and in other yarns so that the pictures will come out better, and submitting my final draft, which has to be by the end of the month. And so, yes, I guess I can consider that a plus, something to look forward to. So if you are not an Instagram user, and this is a good reason to apply for an account, get your username, and follow the Crochet Zine magazine on Instagram. I mean, not just because of what I'm going to publish there, but because I believe it is it's free for now, or I don't know if it's always going to be free, but at the moment it is free. And so yes, it's a good deal. You just have to subscribe to Instagram, that is still free, create your account, that is still free, follow Crochet Zine, which is very easy to do and also free, and every month you will receive a 12-page magazine with other pages inside those pages, and they interview crocheters. They present people that are crafters and cool crafters, let's say. Maybe there's a lot of interesting things going on in their lives. They have interviews, they have articles, they have free patterns, and so it's a great idea, and I believe it's something to get into if you haven't gotten it already. And so if you do decide, or if you are on Instagram or do decide to become a user, a member of the Instagram community, well, look me up on their stories, Crochet Zine stories on March the 17th, and hopefully I'll be there. Okay, let's see what happens to us. Hopefully I'll be there, and along with my presence, you'll get a simple and yet satisfying pattern that you can work with. Free pattern. Okay, extra bits and bobs. Well, let's talk about what I've been avoiding to talk about because I was trying to make this a coherent recording, but I mean, when you get mentioning things like that, people are always going to say, why don't you talk about it now? Why don't you talk about it? The idea is that I have not been able to produce as much crochet as I would have liked to, or as I maybe even normally do during this podcast, because somehow I have developed one of those repeated movement injuries in my shoulder. I say somehow, but it's not somehow. I know how. It's obviously because I was sitting down for too many long hours at a time doing the same movement of crochet or knitting or felting for hours long. And it's not the craft's fault, it is my fault because I haven't been cautious with the periods that I sit down. And you know that and sometimes it even makes me feel ashamed, the amount of times that we mention on these podcasts injuries that we could have avoided because we knew that they could occur, and we also knew how to avoid them, and I wasn't doing that. And so I've developed an injury, and it's a rotational injury, so it does affect my movement. I can go up this far without feeling pain, and then I feel pain. So it's okay to work down here. I can crochet down here. I don't feel anything. It's when I lift my arm up, which is not a movement that I do in crochet, but I do have to do it in other areas. For example, I am a professor, and so when I write on the board, I do have to lift my arm up, and even around the house, and as a housewife, you have to clean and pick up things and move things that requires you to move your arm. Even getting dressed, so it requires this. So, but I have had to step back and make my sittings, my crochet sittings or my crafting sittings in very short periods, in like half an hour, no more than 40 minutes, and then have a couple of hours in between or a long period in between that I don't craft. So luckily I am working 2 days a week now, and I work all day I leave here at 5:30 in the morning and I get back at 5:30 in the afternoon. And so there are 2 days where those long periods are just part of my life right now. And there are other days when I'm at home, like today, where I just have to make it work. I just have to try and put on a timer, and when that timer buzzes, I have to get up, because it's not in my nature. It's not because of the craft. It's not in my nature to leave things unfinished. And so I always want to get go and go and go and go to see if I can finish something. Which, you know, that in crochet, it's not, you know, always possible to finish something in one sitting. But yes, I have injured myself. It's not a problem of the craft, it's a problem of me as a person. So I've had to redistribute my time. You know, that balance that I was talking about last year and the year before that I wanted to achieve. Well, this is going to be the time where I have to achieve it, because I have to work at it. I'm not going to be able to continue crafting if I continue abusing myself in this way. So those are the breaks, and that's why with something like crochet planned pooling, you can't get a lot done, because most of that half hour is spent, because I'm a newbie, most of that half hour is spent frogging back, ripping back, and repeating so I can get the right amount of stitches. So that's why it's been slow and frustrating, because I mean, I do 14 rows and figure out I have the wrong number of stitches for the pattern that I was planning on doing, and I have to rip it all back, and it's painful now. It's more painful now than it was before. So hopefully I'll be able to heal and then carry on. Well, no, I'm not going to say my normal lifestyle, because I can't go back to that. I can't go back to those long hour sittings, because I'm just going to get to a point where I won't be able to do anything, and I don't want that to happen. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully I'll be back, if my arm doesn't get worse, in 2 weeks. If not, I might, if I have to take a month or so of rest, I'll let you know. But thank you for being with me today. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and to press the like button if you liked what you have shared with me today. It is one of those things that helps get this podcast out to more people, and I deeply appreciate doing those two things for me. So until we meet again, take care of yourself. Keep yourself safe. Safe, you know, including injuries. Keep yourself healthy in that same way. And keep crafting. I'll see you. Take care. See you soon.